Hi everybody, it is time once again for our Jane Eyre read-along. Today we're going to be starting off with chapter 13. If you missed our live reading yesterday of the second half of chapter 12, you can find that in the videos section, which is going to be on the left side of your screen if you're on your desktop computer, or if you're on your mobile, you can just scroll, where it says photos and all that, and there's going to be a video section. So yesterday we left off with Mr. Rochester coming home, and Jane learned for sure that that was the person she met on the road to Hay, because this person has a sprained ankle. And in this chapter they actually have a bit of a conversation. So let's get started, and while I'm reading, I'd like you to think about if Mr. Rochester is what you expected. So, maybe think back to the first time you read it, or if this is the first time, is he what you would consider the usual romantic hero in a classic story? All right, here we go. Chapter 13. Mr. Rochester, it seems, by the surgeon's orders, went to bed early that night, nor did he rise soon next morning. When he did come down, it was to attend to business. His agent and some of his tenants were arrived, and waiting to speak with him. Adele and I now had to vacate the library. It would be in daily requisition as a reception room for callers. A fire was lit in an apartment upstairs, and there I carried our books and arranged it for the future schoolroom. I discerned in the course of the morning that Thornfield Hall was a changed place. No longer silent as a church, it echoed every hour or two to a knock at the door or a clang of the bell. Steps, too, often traversed the hall, and new voices spoke in different keys below. A rill from the outer world was flowing through it. It had a master. For my part, I liked it better. Adele was not easy to teach that day. She could not apply. She kept running to the door and looking over the banisters to see if she could get a glimpse of Mr. Rochester. Then she coined pretexts to go downstairs, in order, as I shrewdly suspected, to visit the library, where I knew she was not wanted. Then, when I got a little angry and made her sit still, she continued to talk incessantly of her friend, Monsieur Edouard Fairfax de Rochester, as she dubbed him. I had not before heard his pranomens, and to conjecture what presents he had brought for her, for it appears he had intimated the night before that when his luggage came from Millcote, there would be found amongst it a little box in whose contents she had an interest. And then Adele says a bunch of things in French, so I'm just going to read you the English translation. And that must mean that there will be a gift in there for me, and perhaps for you too, miss. Monsieur spoke of you. He asked me the name of my governess, and if she was not a small person, rather thin and a little pale. I said yes, because it's true, isn't it, miss? Thanks for the thumbs up. I and my pupil dined as usual in Mrs. Fairfax's parlor. The afternoon was wild and snowy, and we passed it in the schoolroom. At dark, I allowed Adele to put away books and work and to run downstairs. For, from the comparative silence below, and from the cessation of appeals to the doorbell, I conjectured that Mr. Rochester was now at liberty. Left alone, I walked to the window, but nothing was to be seen there. Twilight and snowflakes together thickened the air, and hid the very shrubs on the lawn. I let down the curtain and went back to the fireside. In the clear embers I was tracing a view, not unlike a picture I remembered to have seen of the castle of Heidelberg on the Rhine, when Mrs. Fairfax came in. Breaking up by her entrance the fiery mosaic I had been piecing together, and scattering too some heavy, unwelcome thoughts that were beginning to throng on my solitude. Mr. Rochester would be glad if you and your pupil would take tea with him in the drawing-room this evening, said she. He has been so much engaged all day that he could not ask to see you before. When is his tea time? I inquired. Oh, at 6 o'clock. He keeps early hours in the country. You had better change your frock now. I will go with you and fasten it. Here is a candle. Is it necessary to change my frock? Yes, you had better. I always dress for the evening when Mr. Rochester is here. This additional ceremony seemed somewhat stately. However, I repaired to my room, and with Mrs. Fairfax's aid, replaced my black stuff dress by one of black silk, the best and the only additional one I had, except one of light gray, which, in my Lowood notions of the toilet, I thought too fine to be worn except on first-rate occasions. "You want a brooch," said Mrs. Fairfax. I had a single little pearl ornament, which Miss Temple gave me as a parting keepsake. I put it on, and then we went downstairs. Unused as I was to strangers, it was rather a trial to appear thus formally summoned in Mr. Rochester's presence. I let Mrs. Fairfax precede me into the dining-room, and kept in her shade as we crossed that apartment, and, passing the arch, whose curtain was now dropped, entered the elegant recess beyond. 2 wax candles stood lighted on the table, and 2 on the mantelpiece. Basking in the light and heat of a superb fire lay Pilot. Adele knelt near him. Half reclined on a couch appeared Mr. Rochester, his foot supported by the cushion. He was looking at Adele and the dog. The fire shone full on his face. I knew my traveller, with his broad and jetty eyebrows, his square forehead made squarer by the horizontal sweep of his black hair. I recognized his decisive nose, more remarkable for character than for beauty, his full nostrils denoting, I thought, choler, his grim mouth, chin, and jaw. Yes, all 3 were very grim, and no mistake. His shape, now divested of cloak, I perceived harmonized in squareness with his physiognomy. I suppose it was a good figure, in the athletic sense of the term, broad-chested and thin-flanked, though neither tall nor graceful. Mr. Rochester must have been aware of the entrance of Mrs. Fairfax and myself, but it appeared he was not in the mood to notice us, for he never lifted his head, said Mrs. Fairfax in her quiet way. He bowed, still not taking his eyes from the group of the dog and the child. "Let Miss Eyre be seated," said he, and there was something in the forced stiff bow, in the impatient yet formal tone, which seemed further to express what the deuce is it to me whether Miss Eyre be there or not. At this moment I am not disposed to accost her. I sat down quite disembarrassed. A reception of finished politeness would probably have confused me. I could not have returned or repaid it by answering grace and elegance on my part, but harsh caprice laid me under no obligation. On the contrary, a decent quiescence under the freak of manner gave me the advantage. Besides, the eccentricity of the proceeding was piquant. I felt interested to see how he would go on. He went on as a statue would, that is, he neither spoke nor moved. Mrs. Fairfax seemed to think it necessary that someone should be amiable, and she began to talk, kindly as usual, and as usual, rather trite. She condoled with him on the pressure of business he had had all day, on the annoyance it must have been to him with that painful sprain. Then she commended his patience and perseverance in going through with it. "Madame, I should like some tea," was the sole rejoinder she got. She hastened to ring the bell, and when the tray came, she proceeded to arrange the cups, spoons, etc., with assiduous celerity. I and Adele went to the table, but the master did not leave his couch. "Will you hand Mr. Rochester his cup?" said Mrs. Fairfax to me. "Adele might spill it." I did as requested. As he took the cup from my hand, Adele, thinking the moment propitious for making a request in my favor, cried out, in French, this is the English translation, "Is there a gift for Miss Eyre in your little chest?" "Who talks of a gift?" he said gruffly. "Did you expect a present, Miss Eyre? Are you fond of presents?" And he searched my face with eyes that I saw were dark, irate, and piercing. "I hardly know, sir. I have little experience of them. They are generally thought pleasant things." "Generally thought? But what do you think?" "I should be obliged to take time, sir, before I could give you an answer worthy of your acceptance. A present has many faces to it, has it not? And one should consider all before pronouncing an opinion as to its nature. Miss Eyre, you are not so unsophisticated as Adele. She demands a present, clamorously, the moment she sees me, but you beat around the bush. Because I have less confidence in my deserts than Adele has. She can prefer the claim of old acquaintance, and the right, too, of custom, for she says you have always been in the habit of giving her playthings, But if I had to make out a case, I should be puzzled, since I am a stranger, and have done nothing to entitle me to an acknowledgment. Oh, don't fall back on over-modesty. I have examined Adele, and find you have taken great pains with her. She is not bright. She has no talents, yet in a short time she has made much improvement. Sir, you have now given me my present. I am obliged to you. It is the meed teachers most covet, praise of their pupils' progress. Humph, said Mr. Rochester, and he took his tea in silence. Come to the fire, said the master, when the tray was taken away, and Mrs. Fairfax had settled into a corner with her knitting. While Adele was leading me by the hand round the room, showing me the beautiful books and ornaments on the consoles and chiffoniers, we obeyed, as in duty bound. Adele wanted to take a seat on my knee, but she was ordered to amuse herself with Pilot. You have been residents in my house 3 months? Yes, sir. And you came from Lowood School in Shire? Ah, a charitable concern. How long were you there? 8 years. 8 years? You must be tenacious of life. I thought half the time in such a place would have done up any constitution. No wonder you have rather the look of another world. I marveled where you had got that sort of face. When you came on me in Hay Lane last night, I thought unaccountably of fairy tales, and had half a mind to demand whether you had bewitched my horse. I'm not sure yet. Who are your parents? I have none. Nor ever had, I suppose. Do you remember them? No. I thought not. And so you were waiting for your people when you sat on the stile? For whom, sir? For the men in green. It was a proper moonlight evening for them. Did I break through one of your rings that you spread that damned ice on the causeway? I shook my head. The men in green all forsook England 100 years ago, said I, speaking as seriously as he had done. And not even in Hay Lane, or the fields about it, could you find a trace of them. I don't think either summer or harvest or winter moon will ever shine on their revels more. Mrs. Fairfax had dropped her knitting, and, with raised eyebrows, seemed wondering what sort of talk this was. So that is the first half of Chapter 13. I hope you liked it. One of the things I really like about Jane Eyre is the banter between Rochester and her. I think it's a little sarcastic and sassy. I really enjoy it, and there's a lot more of that coming up. So I hope you will join me again tomorrow at noon. Until then, stay safe, and thanks for watching. Bye.